Stephen Speak, a podcast about everything and nothing. Don't forget to subscribe. Hello, welcome to episode 15 XV of Stephen Speak. Today's episode, as always, was chosen a short time ago, and has been chosen off the back of a conversation between me and my darling wife. So, so there you go. I hope you're all right. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, I am adjusting my microphone because I am useless. I will improve, promise. So today's ep is about music, and it's probably going to have to be over a few episodes, to be honest. So, I'm going to talk about my love for music, playing an instrument, inspirations in my life, and not from just celebrity, but from from my actual life. Just going through that really, and seeing where that takes me. And I probably won't get to because of how much I ramble and go back and forth. I think I'll probably just give an overview of how I am with music, like how my brain works and my love for music and the facets of composition and how that led me to learn. We'll see how far we get, and then I'll probably revisit this and expand further. But basically, like most people, I absolutely adore music. And a lot of people probably can say they have a favourite band or, a favourite genre even, and maybe play an instrument. And I probably tick all them boxes, like many people. But my music's been very important to me from a very, very young age, and I'm only kind of realising probably now why that is, because music really does. Excuse my chair, by the way. I don't know if that came out on the recording. My chair is super squeaky today. I may even stand up at some point because it's ridiculous. If I move a tiny bit, it's not typical. It's not doing it when I want it to. Anyway, I kind of think I'm realising more recently about how my brain works, about why music was so important to me, and it probably goes for a lot of people anyway, but it put me in a zone, music. It's relatable. Sometimes it's a bit abstract, so you can take from it what you want. So that ambiguity was sort of sometimes very good for me. Sometimes it was good that it was so direct, speaking to certain circumstances, like a love song would, etc. And I think that I appreciated classical music and stuff when I was very young as well, and I don't really know where that came from. My mum's dad was into big bands and classical music, so maybe just from him, because I super held him with such esteem and wanted to be like him, so maybe that's where it came from a little bit. But I've always had a love for the complexities of music and the intricacies and the layers on music, and there's certain bands and musicians that are superb at putting a composition together which is interesting, and when you're listening to it, especially through some headphones, and it's that immersive moment. I just love music, and when I was younger, not as much now, because obviously life and such things. But I always have some music on most of the time in some form. But when I was younger, I used to listen to my own music in the car, and when I was out, and I used to take a sample of cassettes with me wherever I could go, and getting a personal stereo was super freeing for me. I remember my first personal stereo. It was a big clunky plastic brick. I don't know if it was even a well-known make. It was just literally a player. You couldn't fast forward. Didn't have auto reverse, so you didn't have to take the tape out to play the opposite side. And anyone that's probably under 30 really probably won't really remember cassettes as fondly as most people do. I'm not going to mention mini discs. I think I've professed my love for mini discs, but I think as time goes on, obviously, like digital music, obviously, like on my phone, I could save tens of thousands of songs. Whereas if you're going to put that on cassette form, how many cassettes would that be? Like probably like I don't even know. It would be a ridiculous amount, wouldn't it? So there are advantages nowadays, but like when I was a kid, like my personal stereo was my best friend. I used to completely submerge myself and immerse myself in whatever I was listening to. It didn't really matter. And the things I used to listen to when I was a kid was stuff like Elton John, the Beach Boys, classical music, anything I could get my hands on, really. Like soundtracks. I had Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack and Turtle soundtrack, and I used to play them to death. I had a Bon Jovi album. I had Roxette, and on all these albums, like quite varying, like genres, and yeah, I had like Phil Collins as well. Like I'm quite looking at the fact that my brother's a little bit older than me, so he kind of like introduced me to a bit of his music when he was going through like grunge phase and dance phase and all this sort of stuff. And my dad's got quite. My mum and dad have similar tastes, and they both like Motown and stuff like that. But my dad also is like really into like the Moody Blues and the Israelites and Bob Marley and stuff. Like, I don't think you'd probably think that of him when you saw him. And my mum loves Simply Red but they both love like a mixture of rock music and stuff. Like pretty much they're very open to stuff, a bit of country as well. And so I think my tastes, having the influence of all three, it's really made an impact into my life. And unsurprisingly, from a young age, I wanted to learn an instrument. Like I was always singing and using my voice or my hands to make rhythm. And Elton John was a massive influence in me wanting to play the piano, I think. And I never got to learn to play the piano, if I'm honest. So I tell people I play the piano because it's just easier to tell them that than the instrument. Well, I find it's easier to tell them that rather than the instrument that I did learn to play, because I don't have the instrument that I actually learned to play. And the actual instrument that I had lessons on for quite a considerable amount of years was the organ. Now, when I say organ, I don't mean like keyboard. I mean like an organ, like two keyboards, swell pedal, foot pedals, like church style organ. And a chap up the street came out of like teaching a retirement for me. A wonderful man called Eric Tweets, passed away unfortunately some years ago, and but he was an unlikely teacher in some ways, because I was always expecting like you see piano teachers and stuff on television. In my brain, it was like some sort of stuck-up woman or stuck-up man, hitting you with a ruler if you got something wrong, and really, really making you do all the disciplined techniques and stuff. And don't get me wrong, like Eric, he was a disciplinarian, but in a laid-back, chilled way, and he treated me like an adult. It was probably one of the first times that someone's actually probably spoke to me on a level, and we had something in common. It was really nice. And Eric played the piano. He also played saxophone and a couple of, I think, clarinet as well. And he's brilliant. Dabbled on the drums a little bit, and he was just ace. He was just a really nice chap. And what came around to getting organ lessons really is I wanted piano lessons, and piano lessons are really expensive. Like you're talking like this was, what year would this be? It'd be like, I don't know, like early 90s, like maybe 93, 94, maybe 93, 92, maybe. I don't know. Because I was in junior school when I first started having lessons, and basically how it came about was my mum was looking, and a lot of people said I was too old to start as well. Some places where she'd looked previously said I was too young to start, and some places said I was too old to start. And I was probably about 10. And some place said, oh, no, it's too late, you should have started at 8, or some place you should have started at 6. Another place said, oh, no, you need to start when you're 12, you won't be disciplined enough. And it was very bizarre, really, like the difference. But it was quite expensive. Like, I think it was, like, even back then, it was like £20 or so for, like, half an hour, 20 minutes, which is, like, super dear, like £1 a minute. And I mean, I don't know what that equates to now, but it's probably double, or, like, £35 an hour or something like that, £40 an hour or something, which would be quite expensive now. And my mum got chatting one day to someone in the supermarket. I was with her, and it was Eric's wife, Pauline, and she used to be the receptionist in our doctor's. And it just came up in conversation that, trying to get me lessons, and Mum knew that. I think she knew partly that Eric was like a teacher back in the day, and she just mentioned it in passing. And Pauline said, you know what, like, I don't think we realised we lived on the same street. Maybe we did, I don't know. Eric just lived up the road, with obviously with Pauline, she was married to her. And it came out that basically she said, I'll ask him and see what he says, as you're just down the road, like it's not like you're travelling or anything like that. So he contacted us and basically said he would charge us, I think it was £20 for the hour, so that was actually quite cheap from what we'd had like previously. So it was kind of, that was like a big tick straight away, and it was kind of like on his terms. He basically said that I'll come down, we'll spend a couple of hours together, but I'll only charge you like the fee for an hour or whatever it was, and then we'll see how he is, because we'll see if he's got like that natural ability plus the willingness to learn and blah, blah, blah. Basically, I think he wanted to test the water, see if I was nice as well, see if I was a brat or not. And he came down on the Saturday morning, a few weeks later. I was super nervous. We had an old, did he bring a keyboard? I can't remember. We did set our old one up, because we had like a little tiny one my dad had bought himself years. I've actually got it in my room here. A little Yamaha keyboard, like half-size keys. And I think we might have set that up, but I think he might have brought something as well. I can't quite remember. It was a long time ago. But all I remember is just having the best time. I've always liked learning stuff, especially like anyone, if it's something you're really interested in. And we just sat and talked about why I was into music, what I wanted to learn. And he basically said to me, like, I'm not going to teach you to play songs. And I was really confused. I was like, well, sure, that's the whole idea. Like, you'd tell me the chords or the notes or whatever to play, and I play them. And he says, no, I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you properly. Like, I'm going to teach you how to read music. I'm going to teach you what the notes are. You will learn them. You will revise. I will test you. I'm going to teach you the scales. I'm going to teach you keys. And you will sight read music. So you will be able to play anything. And at the time, like, I was like, what is this old guy talking about? What an arse, basically. I felt a bit disgruntled about it, because, like you're excited to learn, and he'd got me on the keyboard, and by the end of the first lesson, I could play a little bit of music. Couldn't read music, obviously, or anything like that, but he was telling me what keys to press, just tell me a bit of the theory behind it. And that kind of got me excited. I was like, well, he could just tell me how to play like one of my favourite songs, like an Elton John song, and I could just learn it from him. And but what he was trying to give me is the skills to do anything, like not just learn the songs I wanted to at the time. He was trying to give me that skill that I could just go to the music shop, buy a book, open it, and just play anything that's in it. And it took me a couple of years, I think, really, to come around to his way of thinking. And even sometimes I was a bit pissed off with him, because he was quite restrictive sometimes. He could be really restrictive. Like, I bought I don't forget, I think I'd been learning a couple of years, and we'd gone to Ireland, and we'd seen The Lion King. And it was like a simplified piano book of the Lion King soundtrack. And I loved like The Circle of Life and This Land and stuff like that, some of the instrumental tracks. And I think my mum had bought it for me as a little present, because I'd been good. So I was super excited, like, I'm going to take this home, and when I get home, I'm going to play it, and I can show Eric what I've learned, and blah, blah, blah. And he was kind of like really pissed off, because he'd kind of told me not to go and buy anything, because we were learning off these organ books, and he wanted to like follow that, because it was like a good learning structure, and they were and Eric played. We'll go back a little bit actually, because the reason I started playing the organ was, even though Eric had like piano skills, his predominant thing was the organ, and I think his view of it was, well, if you can play the organ, you can play the piano, and I'll teach you the skills for both. because he used to play the organ at the local workmen's club for the dances. And he'd been in a band when he was younger. I believe they were called the Masqueraders. And I've always got a vision in my head of him in like him as a young stud in the club, on his saxophone and swapping instruments and stuff. And I always imagine him like being a bit of a ladies' man, because he was quite a cheeky. He was a handsome guy, and he was quite a cheeky guy. When he was being light-hearted, when he wasn't bringing the hammer down on my music lessons, he was really chilled, laid out, lovely chap, and I can imagine people swooning over him. And he basically said to my mum and myself that the organ's probably the way to go. They're a bit cheaper than pianos, easy to store in your house. They're electric. They don't need the maintenance that a piano would need, like tuning and stuff like that. And I wasn't that happy because my dream was to learn the piano. I don't know what I thought my mum and dad were going to do. But I dreamt of having a grand piano, and a grand piano would have filled our living room. So I don't know where that was coming from. And even an upright piano wouldn't have fitted in our house. There would have been no space for the dining room table and chairs and stuff. So we bought an organ. We bought a keyboard at first. He helped us find a second-hand, full-size keyboard. And I think we bought a second-hand for about 30 quid or so, 40 quid. And that I played on that for quite a while, maybe a year. But it come very quickly that he said, right, we want you to teach the organ. You need the second keyboard, you need the pedals, time to switch kind of thing. So I was very lucky, and and my mum and dad used to, give me and my brother everything we could, everything they could, and we I think I had it from I think it was a Christmas and a birthday present combined, and I had to be friggin' a saint as well. And we went to there was an organ centre. Sounds hilarious, doesn't it? It was an organ centre in Macclesfield, which is not far from where I live. It's about a 45-minute drive. So we went over there one day, and it was like a car showroom for organs, and I took a couple of music books, and Eric came with us. We played on some of the organs and tested them out, and there was someone that could do everything. Like to today's standards of instruments, they'd probably be crap, but they could accompany with an orchestra and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, they were beautiful. Some of them were amazing. You could put 3.5-inch floppy disks in them and put MIDI files onto them and record onto the disks and put them into your computer. And I really wanted one that could do that, but it was a lot more money. So I ended up getting, I think it was a second-hand one from there. But it cost a fair amount. And I loved that organ. It was brilliant. It was mine. It was something I looked after. And I'd practice on it, and yeah, it did really help, and Eric was a strict teacher, as I've said. We'd have these I can't remember what the author's called. Oh my god, I should know because I was staring at them for friggin' hours. Oh my god. But they had each book was a different colour, so when you went up the books, they were meant to be each book was meant to be a grade of music, basically. So if you could progress through book 1, which I think was red, it's going to really annoy me what they're called, but it had the picture of 2 hands on 2 keyboards, obviously like an organ, and it just said book 1, and there was a collection of popular music in it. Some of it was instrumental, so the first one was quite basic stuff. So I think it had Largo and Merrily We Roll Along and stuff like that in it. Really, really simple stuff, simple chords. I don't even think they had the bass pedal on them ones, but Eric added that in because he didn't want to get me into a lazy behaviour, and it was all about learning the notes, learning timings, time signatures and all that sort of stuff. And then book 2 was yellow, book 3 was blue, book 4 was green, I think. Yeah, so there was all these different coloured books, and to say as you went up the grades, as you went up the book number, so book 1 was technically meant to be grade 1, so as soon as you'd finished that and you could proficiently play everything in it, you were technically grade 1 on the organ. I never actually did any tests, so I never actually accomplished any grades technically, which is something I kind of regret because it's probably kind of hard to say to someone, well, I got to grade 8 on the organ, and then prove it, and I'm like, oh, I can't really. I got to the book number 8, and I could pretty much read anything that was in front of me. Baker books, that's what they're called, Baker. Brian Baker? Was it Brian Baker? Baker, anyway. I'm pretty sure that's what they were called. They were called like the Complete Organ Player. Yeah, but my music teacher, Eric, he basically said that as far as he was concerned, I was as good as he was, which was a compliment. And I did get super good at sight reading. But this was going back to it, like when I bought that Lion King book, he didn't want me trying to run before I could walk. He didn't want me getting into bad habits. He didn't want me to learn a song. He wanted me to. He kind of said to me, like, you can play a song over and 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 over again, and you do learn it, but you should never not have the music there. And I was just thinking, well, it looks better because you never see like Elton John with the music on his piano. You never see Billy Joel with the music on his piano. You never see that. You know, like classical people, you do. Like if you go to see a classical pianist, generally they'll still have the music there. Not all the time, but generally they'll still have the music there. Especially nowadays, they have the digital stuff, so it automatically changes the page for you. So a lot of them will have something somewhere as a cue. And I was a little bit pissed off because I was thinking, well, if someone comes around and hears me play, I felt it was you looked more proficient if you could like do it from memory rather than read the music. And he was telling me the opposite. He was like, no, you should always have the music in front of you. You know, one, because it's a bad habit to try and memorize things. And 2, if you suddenly forget something, if you're following the music, you won't forget it, because even though you might be semi doing it from memory, you'll have it in front of you. And again, I didn't really, when he was teaching me this, I didn't really, until I was a bit older, really kind of appreciate what he was doing. And but it really astounded me one day when he just put a music book down in front of me. It was he actually confiscated that Lion King book, by the way. When he found out I'd got it, and he just said to Mum, I'm taking this home. And she was like, okay. And he was like, well, I've told him I didn't want him I didn't want him like learning anything until I told him to. And she was like, oh, right, okay then. Fine. And I was like, no, it's my book, like, you know what I mean? I may have even bought that myself. Like, maybe that's why I was so annoyed. And yeah, he took it home, and I didn't see it for months, and I was struggling playing it, if I'm honest with you. I was struggling playing some of the stuff, and he said, listen, I don't want you like trying to play something, get pissed off and blah, 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 blah. And also, I've told you not to. So it was kind of like a double-edged sword, really. He was like pissed off that I was trying to do something he said I shouldn't do. And also, he didn't want me, I don't think he wanted me being frustrated that I couldn't do something and trying to run before I could walk. And I don't think he wanted me to have that disappointment and not being able to do it. And he brought it down again. Probably about like 6 months later, when I'd advanced and I'd gone up a book, and he'd been really drilling me, like in trying to like flex my hands, trying to get me to do. He had these like finger exercises that I did, like doing arpeggios up and down the keyboards with both hands, and then reverse order, and doing the scales with both hands, and then sight reading, random things. And he used to get me to do a bit of homework where he'd be like, right, just write some random notes down, and like make sure they've got the right time signature, and do it for different things, and I'll mark it for you. So he was really teaching me an all round thing. And I say he brought back the Lion King book one day, and I was really annoyed because I thought, I can't even play this. Why have you done that? Like, I'm just going to be embarrassed because you put it in front of me. I feel a bit like a naughty child because you've taken it off me. And he just said, right, go through that and what's your favourite song? And I think the hardest song in it, actually, I think was I Just Can't Wait to Be King, which I wasn't overly keen on that song. I really bought it for the Elton John songs in it and the instrumentals. And he said, right, that's the hardest song in it, play that. And I literally sight read it. Perfect. First time, all the way through, start to finish. And he was so fucking smug because he was like, and that's why I took it off you. He says, because you weren't ready for it, and now you are, and look what you've just done. Like, you sight read that, and it's a complex song. Well done, kind of thing. And I was pretty chuffed, but I was really pissed off he was right as well. I was just like, you smug bastard. But he was just the kindest, lovely teacher you could wish to have to teach you music. yeah, he was a very, very good egg. And I always remember he had like really flattened thumbs, and kind of the pads on his fingers, like below, like basically the reverse of where your fingernails are, the ends of his fingers. They were quite like flattened. And I remember for months and months and months just staring at his thumbs when he was playing, thinking, how fat are your thumbs? Like he looked like frog thumb pad things. Like you see like little geckos or little tree frogs. And I think he saw me staring at them one day, which is probably like I'd been doing for weeks and weeks and weeks. And he just said to me, he says, you notice on my thumbs? He said, it's just years of pounding the ivories and playing saxophone and pressing the keys. And I was like, oh, wow, that's mad that would do. And then I wasn't asked about it then. I was thinking, well, maybe I want frog fingers. Like, then I could say that's because I'm as good as Eric then. Like, I've got frog fingers. But, yeah. And a little quirk about him as well, which is his wife used to go mad. Nothing about music. But he used to keep kettles in his loft. He always couldn't be without like having a kettle, because he couldn't be without having a brew or something like that. So he used to keep kettles in his loft. So when a kettle broke, he'd keep the old one, weirdly, in case he needed spares and repairs, I'm guessing. And then he'd try and buy like the same one, but he'd like buy two kettles at the same time, so he could always have a spare. And I think they were having a clear out, and I'm sure his wife said they had like 15 kettles in the loft, because she thought he'd been throwing them away, but he'd actually been storing them up. But he thought it was hilarious. But he had like a little room in his house. They had like I think it was a 3-bedroom maybe, or 2-bedroom house. And the second bedroom or the third bedroom, whichever one it was like his music room. And I remember the first time I went up there, and I think this is when I knew that he'd accepted me as like a student. In fact, I'll come back to that, because when I knew he'd accepted me as a student is when he told us that he was going to carry on, obviously. But after that first lesson, he said he was meant to be charging us £20 for an hour. And the first time he was there, I think he was in our house 2 to 3 hours, and he only took the £20. He only took the £20. In fact, he only took the £5 actually. He only took a £5, and he basically said to Mum, it's been a pleasure. He's really keen. He has natural talent. He's a nice lad. He's listening. And he says, I only want a £5. And Mum was like, no, you can't. Oh, he says, no. He says, I'll be here every Saturday morning. And it was still meant to be half an hour. And he says, I'll do the half an hour for a £5. But every time he'd overrun, so he'd be there 45 minutes, normally an hour, and he only used to take the £5. And then it just became a thing where he would teach me for an hour every Saturday morning between 10 and 11 for a £5. Absolute bargain. And he said that I think it did him good sense, because I think he'd given up that teaching, and I think it did him good that he had something to do every Saturday morning, and he was enjoying passing on that knowledge again. And I know what he means, because I've tried to teach a couple of people. I'll say try, because unfortunately it hasn't lasted, or I've passed on small nuggets of knowledge. And no matter what you do, so no matter what it is that you pass on, it's kind of nice to pass some knowledge on and teach someone that you're proficient in, whether it's your job or whether it's like a hobby. And I think I knew that our friendship had like solidified, let's say, because obviously we both had this natural connection to music. He was very passionate about music, and I think that when I knew that, like this was kind of like, well, it was more than just like him being a teacher and me a student. It was like kind of like a bond that we had. It was when he invited me up to his house one day. He says, we'll do the lesson at my house. And I was like, why? He's like, well, I want to show you some of my instruments. I want you to have a go. And he said, it'll be more of a fun lesson. He says, 'cause I think he was worried I was getting pissed off with him because he was pushing me so hard. But I was quite lazy as well. I didn't always practice through the week. And he could always tell. He'd be like, have you been practicing? And I'd be like, yeah. And normally I'd be practicing right before he came. So he'd literally be like, I'd like do like half an hour practice before he'd turn up. And he'd be like, right, did you practice that song? And I'd be like, oh, yeah. Have you cracked it? And I'd be like, oh, yeah. And I'd play it through, and he was like, you've not practiced at all, have you? And I'm like, no, I have. And he'd be like, you haven't. And he says, I don't care if you haven't. He says, but if you want this to work, you've got to practice. And you want to get better at something, you've got to practice. It's not, he says, you have natural talent. He says, but it doesn't come out of thin air. You still got to practice. I practice still. And I was like, what? And I think this is where it led going to his house. And he had this little room, probably about the size of the one that I'm sat in right now, actually. and he had his saxophone and I think he had a flute and a clarinet and loads of keyboards and loads of stuff I didn't even know what it was, like amplifiers and things like that. I think he had a guitar in the corner, but I don't think he could play guitar. I think it was like something he accumulated, or it was his sons or something like that, or friends or something. But yeah, and I was stood in that room, and he let me have a go of stuff, and it's a very trusting thing when you let like someone else like use an instrument or play an instrument, especially like when you're playing a guitar and someone says, "Oh, can I have a go?" You're kind of like protective over that stuff, and he let me into his little world, and I really felt that we'd cracked something there, and yeah, the lessons continued until I went to college, and then unfortunately they faded out a little bit. I think Eric was losing his hearing a little bit, and it was becoming more and more apparent that he would stop me playing and go, "Oh, you made a mistake there," and I'd be like, "I didn't make a mistake," and he would think I did, and it was getting a bit like The Apprentice had become a master kind of thing, and I think with his hearing going and stuff, like it was annoying me because I was like, I know I didn't make a mistake, and I was kind of like trying to be mature about it and not argue with him or question him too much. And then I think one day I just said to him, Eric, like I've got to concentrate on college and potentially going to university or going into work, and I said I'm so thankful, and it was really upsetting actually to end them lessons, and I think for him as well, he missed them as well. But we'd still get together every so often, and I'd go around for a brew, and we'd kick it for a little while. But unfortunately, connections get lost sometimes, and I moved out of my house and moved into my own place, and we lost contact. And I saw him occasionally, like every couple of years, or we'd bump into each other in town. But yeah, it was. He was always pushing me. He always wanted me to do big things, and I think he'd be really pissed off I haven't done anything on my music, to be honest. So I'm sorry, Eric. I still dabble, and what you taught me is still the foundation of everything I do. But yeah, I think he always expected me to join a band or become a singer and a songwriter, and more than just sitting in my bedroom doing it. You never know, maybe I could still do that. Well, that's taking us up to me having lessons, so I think I'll leave it there, and we'll come back to this subject in a future podcast and revisit what happened post that, and maybe my school teachers that influenced me, and some other people and some artists and such things. But thank you very much for listening. That went really quick for me. I hope it went okay for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep listening to Stephen Speak. There's going to be some changes happening soon. Not too soon, but October or so. I've got a few guests booked. Ooh, exciting! And I will speak to you all soon. Keep an eye on the social medias for updates, etc. Cheers, guys. You've been listening to Stephen Speak Podcast. I'd appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button.